The Canadian federal election is less than 1 week away, so it is crunch time. The leaders' debate was just a few days ago, and we got to hear from 4 federal parties: the Liberals, the Conservatives, the NDP, and the Bloc. The Green Party had no representation because they essentially exist to make sure that the Liberals win. The CHP and the PPC had no representation because our elites hate anything close to truth and they don't want honesty on display for Canadians to see. I almost wanted nothing to do with the debate because why would I want to watch WrestleMania Canadian Politics Edition and be fooled by the Uniparty? But we love you guys so much that we put ourselves through psychological and emotional torture, all for you. It's April 22nd. I'm Andrew DeBartolo. That's Matt Halleck. This is Liberty Dispatch.
Hey friends, welcome back to Liberty Dispatch, where we bring you conservative Canadian news and analysis from an unapologetically Christian perspective. Make sure you like and subscribe wherever you get our content, whether it be Rumble and YouTube. Please subscribe to our channel so you can stay up to date with everything that we are doing. If you like what we do, you know what to do. And if you haven't done it yet, the place where you can get all our content is over at our Substack, ldcanada.substack.com. You're going to want to go over there and you're going to want to become a paid subscriber, because if you become a paid subscriber, you can get all our content, including extended interviews. And boy, have we had some good interviews lately, Andrew. And the extended pieces are even better. So if you liked what you saw in front of the paywall, there's some juicy content on the other side of those paywalls that you are definitely not going to want to miss out. And that includes the interview we had with Tim Stevens that is getting many of you on the YouTubes, Andrew. So we're thankful to everybody who's watching, commenting, giving us their perspective, whether it's thumbs up to Alberta separatism and independence, or thumbs up to the 51st state, or thumbs down to both of them. We're thankful for the discussions. And I think that's something, Andrew, that we were really trying to highlight, is to have these bigger, broader, more foundational conversations on some of these news topics that you're just not going to get from anywhere else, right? You're going to get the news better than we can deliver it from places like Juno News, True North News, Rebel. They're in the news. They have big budgets and journalists and everything. They can do that stuff, but what we're going to bring is a uniquely Christian perspective to news and analysis. So that's why you're going to.
Well, they're not going to get all. They're not going to get all the news though, because none of those places will touch the sort of jab COVID stuff the way we will. So they might get lots of news, but they certainly won't get all of the news, because we will definitely bring all of the news and all the medical madness that they don't want to deal with. So no slight against them. No, but they don't talk about it the way that we do.
No, we're fans of all those outlets and the work that they're trying to do, independent media. Hey, Andrew, I know we're not going to cover it on today's program, but before we get into it, did you see all the ruckus with the independent media? Like, that became a story in and of itself beyond the debates, is the battle between mainstream media and independent media. Because they literally, in the debate we're going to look at, the English debate, they closed down the media scrum because the legacy outlets were so fired up that Juno and True North and Rebel were able to get people to the front of the line to ask questions to the politicians, that they actually had to cancel the scrums, which is just the height of absurdity.
Because people prefer the darkness rather than the light, because their deeds are evil. So they don't want it to be exposed. That's why.
And the thing that really stood out to me, Andrew, is, I'm surprised that they would say this, because it does expose them. But the legacy outlets are like, well, they were asking questions that are not like, that's not even a part of what we're talking about in this campaign. as though they're the ones who are controlling the narrative. That you have to
I think
stay
someone
within
from
this 4x5.
CBC or CTV News, someone from CBC or CTV News said something to the effect of, "There's only so much we can do to control free speech." Like there was an actual quote from a CTV News article.
No,
Was that about this?
that was the debate organizer, like the commissioner of the debates. And part of it too is the fact that they've lost two. I'm not sure if they were Supreme Court, but they were appellate courts for sure. They've lost two major decisions about the mainstream media and the debates commission trying to stop it so independent media couldn't be there. And it turns out they lost both of them. And that was kind of his response to it. It's like, I think it was David Cochran from CBC who was badgering him. You guys have really made a mess of this. You're allowing crazy far right extremist news outlets to ask questions. Man, what if they're far right extremist outlets? Like, what are we? I wonder.
We're Nazis.
I guess. Despite the fact that we hate Nazis and we don't like centralized government.
We would be Christo-fascist.
Yeah, that's right.
Mega theocratic Nazis. That's us.
Anyways, good to be back. We say often politics fourth on the show, and I think we showed it. It's a Canadian election, and we're 3 weeks into the four week saga here, and we haven't actually done a podcast yet. Yeah. Although we've had some content. Obviously, we had
we've had articles. We had articles going out weekly.
Yeah.
We had the interview series. We had the interviews with the 3 CHP candidates as well.
Exactly.
So content's going out, but we can only do so much. We started an EDA, an electoral district association in our area.
Yeah,
so we're
great.
supporting a candidate who's running in the federal election. So we're doing that. The Twins were pretty brutally sick and teething. There was Easter. There was the interviews. I was at a conference where I got to meet the Bull Bitcoin guys in person. I shared some of those pictures on social media. So lots in the happening. And we're back, though, just in time for the fall of Canada. We're back.
We're back for the home stretch, baby. Let's go. This is, honestly, Andrew, this election cycle, though very consequential, super boring. Oh my goodness. You set it up to start. It is unbelievably boring to watch a uniparty fake, kayfabe. Like I've seen the show before. It's pretty brutal. It feels, despite the actual consequential nature of the election, it feels rather anticlimactic and rather inconsequential. And the Conservatives are proving us right pretty much at every turn. So, anyways, we got some
business. Yeah, we got some business to take care of first. In the midst of an election cycle, which when we planned this originally, the election had not yet been called, but we're going forward with it. Mm-hmm. So this Friday, we have the first of our 3-part webinar series on Bitcoin, hosted by us, Liberty Dispatch, and run by Pablo over at Bull Bitcoin. We got to interview Pablo a few weeks ago. So the first one is this Friday, April 25th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. The topic will be Bitcoin as liberty currency and how Bitcoin can protect your freedom. There's going to be a 30-minute webinar. All of them are going to be 30-minute webinars with audience participation and a Q&A time at the end. The only way that you're going to be able to get the link to join the webinar, which is free, by the way, it's totally free, but the only way you're going to get the link is if you become a subscriber, including a free subscriber. You have to head over to ldcanada.substack.com, become a subscriber. A free subscriber is good. A paid subscriber, that's better, obviously. And then once you sign on as a subscriber to our Substack, we're going to be sending the link later this week. Parts 2 and Parts 3 of the 3-part webinar series are going to be happening the following Fridays. So it's May the 2nd and May the 9th, also at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. They're going to be on Bitcoin 101. And then the third one will be on how to buy and store Bitcoin. So this is the point of these webinars. Whether you're an experienced Bitcoiner or you're just getting started, you have lots of questions. What's a cold card? What's with the passphrase? How does it actually work? How is it uncensorable, uncancelable? How uncancelable? How is it freedom currency? You're going to want to attend these webinars. They are for you. They're going to be informative and enlightening. You're not going to want to miss them. So again, sign up at ldcanada.substack.com. And the plan, we're just going to tease this now, is we're going to do these first 3 webinars, and it's going to be a banger. Then we're going to wait a couple weeks. We're going to reassess. We're going to look at how things went. We'll release the videos. And then the plan is to do another 3-part webinar series, maybe within a month or so of it ending. And we're going to be focusing in on Bitcoin in your business. What about Bitcoin in real estate? What about Bitcoin in churches in terms of taking Bitcoin donation? So we're going to get a little more technical, a little more specific. But this one, especially with that first one, Bitcoin as the liberty currency and how Bitcoin can protect your freedom, sign up to our Substack, become a subscriber, get the link. You're going to want to come to these webinars. They're going to be really, really good. You can ask your questions. It's going to be great.
Yeah, man.
Okay, it's going to be
I'm
great.
looking forward to it. You'll kind of be up front and center. I'll probably be in the background doing tech stuff, as is my lot in life. But I'm sure I'll have some opportunity to engage with people too. But I'm looking forward to it nonetheless.
We got to put the pretty face up front. Right?
Yeah,
like, that's just
of course, yes, yeah.
I mean,
no, I'm okay. No, you don't have to explain. I know my role. I know my lot in life.
we just so in case anyone is confused. So
yeah.
Next, if you're running a business, you know that communicating with customers is essential. So maybe you're using MailChimp, Constant Contact, GoDaddy, or others to send out your monthly newsletter. I mean, that's great. But what if you could do that and automate all your sales and marketing processes all in one system? Sales Nexus is the place to automate email and text marketing campaigns and manage sales. It's simple to set up, and it has the features you need to grow your business. As a bonus, when you switch from MailChimp or Constant Contact, Sales Nexus will enrich your list with phone numbers and missing addresses for everyone on your email list. Head over to salesnexus.com and make sure you let them know that we at Liberty Dispatch sent you to them. That's salesnexus.com. So, leaders debate.
Indeed.
Federal leaders debate a few days ago. You're only going to see 4 leaders, and the reason is the Green Party, which apparently is led by co-leaders, which is weird. They had to pull out
something stupid that the only Greens would do.
Yeah, they had to pull out of the debate because they basically admitted all we're going to do is prop up the Liberals, so they're out. And then Maxime
they got
Bernier
pulled last minute, which is I think on the topic of the debate commission, like they didn't qualify for the debate according to the debate commission's rules, but the debate commission was going to allow them to participate. But then a lot of people said, well, wait a second, you're not allowing other parties that don't qualify to be on stage. So why would you let the Greens who don't qualify to be on stage? And then finally they got rid of it. I'm sure partly because Carney didn't want people there, sucking up his time, and
for sure they also don't want Maxime Bernier there, and and they don't want an actual Christian promoting Christian policies. So we're not going to bring you the whole debate because it's 2 hours that no one should have to struggle through. But we wanted to bring you several clips and montages.
There are a few
want to give you an idea,
consequential moments.
We want to give you an idea of what they discussed, and we want to offer up some of our own thoughts as we approach the upcoming election. Again, that's less than 1 week away. So first, we have a little bit of a highlight reel from Globalist News, and then we're going to give our thoughts after the fact.
The No New Development Law, C-69, guarantees there will not be one-stop shop because it requires the Government of Canada to actually duplicate
So what Mr. Paul is saying is that have no rules,
project.
have no regulation,
have one
have no controls over any energy.
We just got to let him finish his sentence. Let's just let him finish his sentence.
That is not true. In fact, Mr. Singh. The reality is we should have strong rules enforced once. We shouldn't have multiple levels of referral that takes now 17 years to get a major project approved in this country. That is why in the last 10 years we've had the worst economic growth in the entire G7. We cannot afford a fourth liberal term.
I know it may be difficult, Mr. Poilievre. You spent years running against Justin Trudeau on the carbon tax, and they're both gone. Okay, they're both gone. And we're in a new
impersonation of them with the same policies tonight.
Very different. Look, I'm a very different person from Justin Trudeau.
You say that you are a great crisis manager. Which one? I heard of nothing. As far as I know, Brexit happened, even if you were against it.
I asked how much would an industrial carbon tax on Canadian steel add to the price of a car. He won't answer because he knows that it will be very expensive because there's lots of steel in cars. Now, Mr. Carney has temporarily
But do you know the answer?
hidden the
you don't know the answer either. You're just throwing out
thousands of dollars. Thousands of dollars.
Making it up, though.
And I'm sorry to crash your party, guys, but you are telling fairy tales. Clean oil and gas is a fairy tale.
You know, I was born in Fort Smith in the Northwest Territories, just north of what the oil sands became. When I was born and when I was growing up in Edmonton, early days, it was a fairy tale, quote unquote. But you know what happened? Canadian ingenuity, Canadian engineers, Canadian governments, both the federal government and the Alberta government got together and converted this.
The worst pollution in the world.
If I may.
The worst pollution
may I finish? May I finish?
1 week after the election, we all meet, whatever the result, and we start dealing with this crisis together because this is what people, either they are from Alberta or Quebec or wherever, this is what people expect from us.
Mr. Carney, is that something you could get behind?
I look forward to meeting with everyone. You're welcome to come, Steve, if you'd like. Week after twice, but in all seriousness,
that's not very respectful.
No,
that's not very respectful.
I'm coming. On peut jaser un peu. Okay, I come to the court.
On jase.
Yeah, okay. I'll come to the court.
We need to get back to the Canadian tradition, which is that when people come to this country, they leave foreign conflicts behind. The rampaging riots targeting Jewish communities is utterly unacceptable, and it points to the growing chaos that we see on our streets after 10 years of incredibly irresponsible liberal policies.
Your treatment of Palestinians has been frankly disgusting. Your treatment of people who provide care and service for people in Gaza has been disgusting. On top of that, people in Israel and in Palestine deserve to live in peace and security. And Mr. Carney, to date, you've not acknowledged that what's going on in Gaza is now clearly become a genocide.
Something Mr. Blanchet referenced earlier, which is have a result in crisis.
The communist is talking about genocide.
If you ask anyone in the finance industry, if you ask anyone in government in Quebec in 2008, they'll know that I resolved the biggest crisis in Quebec. Yeah,
you won't have fun.
But
60 million.
Will you look at the camera in the eye and apologize to the many people who suffered as a result of the inflationary policies that you advised Justin Trudeau to implement?
You know, I said earlier, but I'm going to say it again. I know you want to be running against Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau isn't here.
Are you denying you were his economic advisor?
I did not provide any of that advice.
But when the government made this recent offer, they said that if I got the secret security clearance briefings, that I would be gagged under the security law, and I could be prosecuted if I spoke freely about matters of foreign interference. Now, given that Canada has experienced Chinese interference by Beijing, the government of China, in 2 consecutive elections, I needed to do my job to speak freely without fear of prosecution.
It has not stopped Mr. Blanchet or Mr. Singh at times during his campaign by making challenges with respect to these issues. So one can address it. I will observe, as someone with a top secret security clearance, that China is not the only country that is accused of foreign interference.
You'll notice we didn't have to change the time of this debate because the Leafs already clinched the Atlantic Division title, and therefore we didn't need to move the debate to accommodate a hockey game.
Which, that just shows you how serious of a country we are. When they moved the first French debate for the Montreal Canadiens last regular season game. It's totally absurd. It shows you where our priorities are.
That's what they care about. I'll also I want to get this point out before I forget. I remember when Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party said that the reason why they needed to push the election originally back to the end of October wasn't because it secured the pension for all of the Liberal MPs, but it was because they wanted to be respectful of not having a campaign and election in the middle of Diwali. I remember that.
That's true.
And yet, the same Liberals had no problem calling a snap election a week after Easter weekend and having a campaign in the middle of Easter weekend. So clearly, they're a bunch of disgusting liars that don't have any principle and will throw Christians under the bus and will elevate their supposed minority oppressed groups, and they'll use everyone as pawns for their political ends because they're a bunch of demons and ghouls. So I just want to make sure I get that point out before we forget.
Well, that's a great point, Andrew. I totally forgot that, and that didn't click to me. And it's actually amazing because all of the advance voting, it started on Good Friday and it finished tonight on Easter Monday. So it literally, all the advance voting was over the most holy day in the Christian calendar, right? So it does show an unbelievable amount of hypocrisy and partiality.
And they'll move the debates for a hockey game, of course.
Yeah,
that's what elbows up. Because elbows up.
Right. Anyways, that was a highlight reel. Did you say that was provided by Global? They put that montage together.
Yeah, that was by Globalist News. That was them.
Yeah.
So right off the bat,
they kind of cut out some of the exchanges where Mark Carney got really smashed over the head by Pierre Poilievre, because especially especially that exchange at the end. When Carney asked the question of Poilievre, why don't you have your security clearance? Poilievre spun it into just clocking him over the head about his Chinese connections, which just shows you that the guy is basically Justin Trudeau 2.0, right? He's the face of the globalist, or Justin Trudeau is the face of the progressive globalist movement, and Mark Carney is its brain. The brain's not firing on all cylinders, though, and it sure is not ready for debates.
Well, that's why you have to keep saying
both debates.
That's why I have to keep saying I'm not Justin Trudeau.
Yeah,
I'm not Justin Trudeau. That is the equivalent of Oz saying pay no attention to the man behind the green curtain. That's exactly what he was doing. I'm not Justin Trudeau. Right. You're just the one that told him what to do for the last 10 years.
Well, it's really funny. It's really funny to me, Andrew, because so he said, he said, I'm not Justin Trudeau a bunch of times, but like Kamala Harris, he hasn't actually been able to differentiate how he's different than Justin Trudeau, right? When and that was a big point in the American election when Harris had had her guard down. She was on The View. It was a friendly, back scratching interview, but they asked her the question, how are you different than Joe Biden? You're his VP. How are you different from him? And she couldn't answer that question. And guess what? That ended up being an albatross around her neck because people were so upset about the state of the current economy, of the current culture. The same is in Canada. Is he keeps saying he's different than Justin Trudeau, but he is the advisor to Justin Trudeau.
Oh, but not on everything though. I mean, no. Remember, like he said though, he was Trudeau's financial advisor, but he didn't advise him on anything having to do with the carbon tax, even though as an economist, historically, Mark Carney has been the largest pusher of the carbon tax and the most influential person in getting nations around the world to join the climate cultism. So,
Well,
but that he didn't tell Justin Trudeau about that. He said
no, and I've read his book, and he's so pro carbon tax. It's incredible, right? Like his one criticism of the carbon tax before he's trying to win power as the prime minister here in Canada in this election was that it was too low, that we needed to do more for carbon tax. He's put forward the proposal that he's going to have carbon tax tariffs on countries that don't have carbon taxes as a punitive measure on them in their inputs. So this is where Mark Carney comes from. So the question that people have to understand is, okay, so either Mark Carney has seen the light and every single, like the core of his worldview, everything he's promoted over the last couple of decades is disastrously wrong and he just figured that out, or he's just lying and trying to manipulate things to try and get elected. I'll let the reader decide what they think is actually the case.
No, he's lying. He's
scenario.
lying. He's lying. He's lying.
Right.
Because if it was the first one, the WEF would probably have him assassinated or disappeared. So it's the second one.
Exactly.
Something else from the debate.
Go. I just wanted to say, when it comes to Carney, it must be understood that Carney is drastically the part that he played in getting us through the 2008 financial crisis has been drastically oversold by the media and by Carney himself. It had more to do with government and banking regulations in Canada, right? Because it was a subprime mortgage crisis that pricked the bubble and, destroyed the American economy and many small regional banks and some of the bigger ones because of these really sharkish loans. Canada didn't allow that type of speculative behavior, so we weren't as damaged by that crisis. So to say that it had something to do with central bank policies is totally absurd. And the actual reality of this situation, Andrew, is the central bank policies have been absolutely, totally, and utterly disastrous for Canadians from 2008 onwards, because what Carney did is he blew out monetary inflation known as quantitative easing, right? And he lowered interest rates. So he blew money and credit into the economy, which really, really, really poured gasoline on the burgeoning fire of Canada's housing crisis, right? Because what happened? It allowed people to get money and credit at lower rates that allowed them to scoop up houses that drove up costs and put us in the situation we are right now. I was just floored. Our friends over at Rocklinc, Andrew, they shared, I think, a quarterly thing, kind of update, and they showed Canadian home prices in gold. And this is an astonishing graph because it actually shows you that in 2024, since the 1950s, we're at the second lowest level of ounces that it would need to take of gold that it would need to take for somebody to buy an average house in Canada, which then tells you what? It tells you that so much of our cost of living crisis, so much of our a crisis when it comes to housing, all that, it's directly the government and their irresponsible spending and monetary inflation policies that have destroyed Canadian currencies and the purchasing power of the dollar and put Canadians in this horrible place. So those are the same policies that Mark Carney has promoted throughout his entire career. Yep. That's the guy that you're going to get if you vote Liberal. He's a disaster. He was a disaster in the debates, and he's a disaster of a human being who believes, he literally in his book believes in the labor theory of value, the same labor theory of value that's bankrupted every single economy ever when it's tried to be put in as like a national policy. He's a disaster.
Jagmeet Singh is also unbearable.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely unbearable. It just like an absolute buffoon.
Yeah.
Just rude, unintelligent, thinks he's got a bunch of gotchas. I'm not only will I be happy when the NDP is
finally
defeated and
shiv him in the back.
And then loses official party status, which they deserve. Yeah. Just unbelievably condescending and unbearable.
That's something we haven't talked about because we haven't done a podcast since kind of the election started. But, the polling numbers, it's been going back and forth between conservative, liberal. The liberals actually, since the start of the election, have been up. But now some of the latest polls, if you can believe them, have the conservatives surging ahead. I tend to believe the Conservatives are going to win. I don't think the Kamala Harris play is going to work in Canada. And the interesting part is a lot of the reason that the Liberals were up in the polls was because the Bloc Québécois and the NDP fell off a cliff, especially the NDP with their popularity. And typically in places where the NDP were picking up seats, it looked like the Liberals are going to get the seats. But since the debates, since people have got to see a little bit more of Mark Carney, those numbers have come down, and some of these left-wing parties, especially the Bloc, is gaining more support in Quebec, and the NDP is gaining a little bit of support back. But yeah, I mean, Jagmeet Singh, man, they can't get rid of him quick enough as the NDP leader. He's totally insufferable. I know there's an active move right now within the NDP to get out the long knives and get rid of Jagmeet. But old Jugger's there with the condom on his head, just interrupting everybody. I think he was like trying to do the Vivek Ramaswamy thing, but the problem is Vivek is probably like 100 IQ points higher than Juggers, so it just came off as like super annoying.
There's also the two other things I noticed were the not taking seriously, like not really taking seriously, even Poilievre, the legitimacy of the threat that is China, and even the degree to which China has even infiltrated the Conservative Party. We saw this during the provincial elections, that there was at least one conservative MPP with the connections to the CCP. And so at the end of the day, they're downplaying the threat that is China, which is interesting because at the same time, they're elevating the threat that is Donald Trump, who I think rightly has assessed, and we're going to see this the next clip, but Donald Trump has assessed rightly the legitimate and serious threat that China poses to the West. And in part, I think that has to do with the way he's been interacting with Canada because of the oversized influence that China has in our country. And so at the same time, they're downplaying the real threat that Trump and his team sees, while also trying to make a bigger deal out of Trump when he isn't. So they downplay that. And then last, the climate alarmism, they're just pushing it so hard.
No, it's unbelievable. And it's amazing to me too that like the Conservatives don't have enough balls to push back. To push back on this stuff. Like their criticisms are so tepid and so surface level. Yeah. And
we're gonna have climate cultism, but we're gonna have slightly less regular. We're gonna be a slightly less bloated version of all our climate policies. When the answer is no, goodbye to all of them. That would be the real conservative thing to do.
That this climate alarmism is a dangerous religious cult that we have to kill. And we're not going to do any of it because it's all insane. And we're just going to let the market do what they do, which has actually resulted in cleaner energy and more efficient energy before even the governments came along, right? I think we looked a while back at if you look at graphs and the kind of the how clean the energy was before much of the regulations came in. There was already a major trend downwards on like carbon emissions. So it turns out that it's profitable. It's good for businesses to do things cleaner, to do things better, to do things more efficiently, and that actually helps their bottom line. So, dude, it's when you watch these debates, the uniparty thing is real. Like the debates are hardly debates. These disagreements are barely there. And, when we talk about multiculturalism, when we talk about climate alarmism, all this stuff, you see it. You see these guys are working on the same operating system, or at least if Poilievre has a different operating system and different worldview, he's too much of a coward to actually bring it to the light because he lives under the liberal gaze. And that really has come out in this election, that the conservatives, for as good as maybe they have some economic policies, they still exist under the liberal gaze. And it's only when they're going to come out of that liberal gaze that they're actually going to experience a groundswell in, I think, positive support for their movement. Because it's going to be tight. It's going to be tight, man. The election's going to be tight.
You know what else happened almost prophetically around the same time as the debate? In fact, the same weekend as the debate, almost as if a point is being made. WrestleMania 41. WrestleMania 41 took place on the Saturday. The Saturday, right? I think sandwiched between the debates. Isn't that amazing? You have the French debate, and then you have
to stay up on their latest talking points. So.
Like the French debate, WrestleMania 41, and then the English debate. I mean, you couldn't write a better story to show you that it's all the same thing. Anyways, we got a couple more clips, but first we need to. You need to see this video. Inflation through the roof.
Grocery prices up 11% year over year.
Censorship of dissident voices. Freezing of bank accounts.
Justin Trudeau invoking emergency powers against the truckers. Banks can now freeze their personal accounts, the accounts of anyone linked to the Freedom Convoy.
Digital surveillance and communism spreading.
What do we want?
Basic income!
With the basic income, I felt a sense of security because I didn't have to worry about not going hungry, and I didn't have to worry about being kicked out of my apartment.
The government is on the verge of bankruptcy, and they're coming for your money.
Is Canada's federal debt increasing in real time, now surpassing $1.2 trillion. This debt is draining taxpayer dollars, with interest alone costing $54 billion this year.
It's time to break free and start saving in money they can't take from you. Since 2013, the folks at Bull Bitcoin have one mission: destroy central banking. Bull Bitcoin is the most trusted Bitcoin company in Canada. They empower you to buy, sell, and pay bills with Bitcoin. They are 100% non-custodial, which means that you always maintain full control over your Bitcoin, allowing you to reclaim your financial sovereignty and secure your wealth for the future. Their customer support will assist you throughout the whole process, helping you get your hands on the hardest money ever created. Escape their financial gulag, click on the link below, and start buying Bitcoin today and get a $20 bonus as a listener of Liberty Dispatch.
Let's go.
Let's go. Let's go.
Love that one. Love that one. Let's go.
So next video we want to show you guys. It's quite clear that in this debate, all of them, they wanted to erect this straw man enemy, right? And the same, they're all erecting the same straw man enemy, and this is the orange boogeyman, Donald Trump, as being, and this is their pitch to you, that Donald Trump is the biggest threat to our economy, and all of our economic woes are because of Donald Trump, which is simply stupid. It is ahistorical. It is laughable on the face of it. So here are some highlights on the topic of Orange Man bad, vote for me, and I will protect you from Orange Man bad. Again, this is the uniparty on display here.
The politician most under fire in Canada's political debate wasn't on the stage.
The biggest risk we have to this economy is Donald Trump.
Mr. Singh, you get the next question.
In their first and only English language debate, Canada's top candidates for Prime Minister took their gloves off against the U.S. president and his trade war.
Seeing what Donald Trump did to attack Canada in this unprovoked way without any justification really felt like a betrayal.
He's trying to break us so the U.S. can own us. They want our land, they want our resources, they want our water, they want our country.
How could you possibly think it's a good idea to give the Americans a continued monopoly on our energy projects?
Donald Trump's tariff war and taunts of making Canada the 51st states have prompted pride for Canada and sinking fortunes for Pierre Poilievre and his Conservative Party. In January, the Conservatives led in polls by 25%, leading to the resignation of the unpopular Liberal Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
I know you want to be running against Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau isn't here.
But the Conservatives' association with Trump's Republicans has prompted a surge for Trudeau's replacement, Mark Carney and his Liberal Party. They are now leading in polls, sending Poilievre on the attack.
Mark Carney is asking for a fourth Liberal term, repeating the exact same Liberal promises that priced you out of a house.
The candidates sparred on energy, the environment, the economy, and the biggest threat Canada faces.
Is China.
The rampant crime wave.
Illegal guns and drugs coming across the border.
For you, what support?
But again and again, the subject returned to the perceived menace to the South.
We should never underestimate the threat that Mr. Trump poses on Quebec economy and Canada economy and Mexico economy.
An issue that has transformed and could well decide the race to lead Canada. John Hendren, Al Jazeera.
Man, that's Al Jazeera stinks. Anyways, it is funny because it did come up. But I also think the big story is going to be how I don't think people actually buy that is the biggest problem facing Canadians anymore. When the tariff threats were new and they were fresh, maybe people were more elbows up. Like, I know the Liberal cult, they're still doing their thing. But with Trump kind of backing off the most intense of his tariff policies, with him exempting a lot of the USMCA kind of deal partners in the tariffs and everything, he's taken a lot of that heat off the table, which is, I think, been detrimental to especially the left-wing parties. You see in most of those clips there, it's not Pierre Poilievre bringing up the subject of Trump, but it's Mark Carney and Juggers Singh who are putting forward that it's Trudeau, or it's Trump, excuse me, who is the biggest threat to the Canadian economy. And Carney spent most of the debate fear-mongering, right? With everything, with Carney, everything's a crisis, right? That's the exact, he's a WEF guy, he's a Davos guy. This is their exact play. Promote a crisis, promote yourself as the only people who can bring a solution to that crisis so that you can obtain wealth and power as being the benefactor to the masses at helping them wade through this crisis. They don't have good record doing that, but that's the play, right? That's the play. Everything's a crisis. Everything's an existential threat. Therefore, we need more government, more bureaucracy, a bigger managerial state, because we have to be able to fight back against the existential threat of climate change, the economic threat of Donald Trump. If you don't make me the Prime Minister of Canada, well, how will we get through all this stuff? That's Carney's playbook over and over again. That's exactly how his book reads when you write it. Manufacture crises that then you provide the solution for. That's how he's made his money, right? There's even clips surfacing on the internet of him just openly saying that he's basically created this grift where he goes to Davos, creates all these policies that he forces governments to enact, and then he invests in the sectors that are implementing the policies that are being forced down on various jurisdictions. And that's how Carney makes a bunch of his money. And it should be noted, he's not going to release any of his, investment data or anything like that before the actual election is up. So there you go.
I also think that people have eyes, and lots of people aren't totally lost to reality. So I think they can assess things and say, hold on a second. The value of our dollar was going down before Donald Trump was president. The price of everything was going up before he was president. The real estate bubble, that's before he was president. Donald Trump hasn't been president for the last 10 years. So how do we explain the lost decade and the worst GDP out of all the G7 nations? And it's been getting worse and worse and worse. So, and then they also say, okay, well, what's he doing down there in the States? Okay, well, there seems to be some good moves in the efficiency and the saving hundreds of billions of dollars. He's making some plays against some of the woke DEI stuff. And so people are saying, is he really the bad guy? Like, in terms of Canada's woes right now, at present, Canada's woes, is he really the problem? Or did we ruin our own economy first? And do we have our own tyrants worse than Donald Trump? And the answer to both of those questions is yes. And I think anyone who's not completely brainwashed will see that the answer to those questions is yes. So when they keep saying that Donald Trump is the greatest threat to Canada, people with any sense would say, actually, he's not the greatest threat to Canada. The greatest threat to Canada is the enemy within. The greatest threat to Canada is the uniparty and the influence of China and the globalists that have infiltrated our federal cabinet. So I think people are seeing it was actually really bad and has been getting worse here before Donald Trump was president, even before he was president in 2016. It goes back beyond that. So they need to, the erecting of Donald Trump as the boogeyman straw man serves a couple purposes for them. The first thing it does is it deflects from the damage that they're doing, right? 100%. And the inflation and the taxation and the policies that are destroying our country. So it deflects from that. It also allows them to give off this air of unity and working together, which plays really well with the public. And then it also, in the same way with COVID, it allows them to sloganeer and virtue signal. My wife and I were out at dinner tonight, and afterward we were sitting down having some dessert treats, and we noticed all these proudly Canadian signs, right? Yeah. Proudly Canadian, made in Canada, made in Canada. And I do most of the grocery shopping, so she asked me, is this like a new thing, or has this always been the case? And I said, no, this is a new thing. And she, because she's very intelligent, said, it's so stupid. It's just all this nonsense. And I said to her, my guess would be the same warehouses and factories that are producing all of this made in Canada, proudly Canadian signage are the same warehouses and factories that were producing all the 6 feet apart, stand here, stay safe together, make sure you wear them. They were probably producing all of the COVID material as well, which means that the same people who virtue signaled and got extremely wealthy off of the threat that is COVID are now also virtue signaling and becoming wealthier off the threat that is Donald Trump. And my wife noticed that people are so fickle, and they are, because if it's not COVID, it's the climate. If it's not climate, it's the Ukraine and Russia. And if it's not that, it's monkeypox, and it's Every Child Matters. And now it's back to the Ukraine, and now it's sodomy month, but now it's COVID, and now it's there will always produce a bad guy. Here is the enemy, so that you don't see that the real enemy is them. They're the real enemy. Canada's greatest enemies are the globalists and the elected officials and the bureaucrats in our own country who say they love us but are destroying our country in every way. But they need to distract from that and put it on Orange Man bad. And in this debate, again, they all did it, right?
Yeah.
So one thing I appreciate about Maxime Bernier, and he said this on social media, is he has said, why is everyone losing their minds over the tariffs when between the carbon tax and our own policies, we're doing way more to harm Canadians? And even the CHP's platform is, we will not meet tariffs with counter tariffs. We will do everything to encourage domestic production and try to have a responsible, grown-up conversation with Donald Trump.
And also
but
reduce
this
taxes at
uniparty,
home.
this uniparty, they're all giving the same answer. Trump bad, elect me, I save you from bad guy.
Yeah, and you got to imagine the conservatives are doing it because of the liberal glare, and they exist in that Ottawa swamp. And even, I mean, the people that Poilievre has surrounded by him, like most of these conservative, like party kind of insiders, they're red shirt conservatives, so they're virtually liberals, just maybe a little bit more fiscally responsible. And we talked about it on the program a bunch of time. Economic conservatism is not conservatism. It's no conservatism at all, and I'm so sick of the nonsense. And it's
not even conservatism, though.
No,
it's not even economic conservatism, because his number. So it's not even economic conservatism, because his number two, his deputy, Melissa Lantsman, she was the main proponent of shutting down all of the small businesses and everything that wasn't a huge conglomerate like Walmart or Loblaws in Ontario, because in a previous job, she was a lobbyist for Walmart and a lobbyist for these big stores. Here she is telling the premier, crush the small businesses and then only do what works for all my buddies and my previous employer. So that's an example of a fiscally irresponsible conservatism that only hurt us. So it's not even that they're economically more sound. I reject that.
Yeah, that's
I'm not saying you're advocating for that, but if people make that argument, I would say, no, sorry, I reject that argument. I actually don't think that's valid.
No, exactly. They're a disaster in a lot of ways too. I don't begrudge people who are going to vote for them, and they want to see the change with the liberals and stuff like that.
I begrudge a little bit,
but I
have a little bit of begrudgment,
especially given the Poilievre coming out and his abortion stance that came out in the French debate. They talked quite a bit about abortion in that debate, and all of them are all on the same page. They are a uniparty when it comes to the direct intentional killing, the murder of innocent preborn children. And I think any Christian,
the genital mutilation of adults, it's okay if they're 18. The killing of old people if it's inconvenient, like they all support that.
Yeah, and I think as Christians we have to have enough integrity to not cast our vote for people who are promoting that sort of thing. Hey, maybe that leads to your guy, like continued Mark Carney judgment, right? The liberals, but we're not called to divine the outcome of the election. We're called to be faithful with the stewards of our vote, of what we get to do.
I'll have some shameless self-promotion toward the end of the show, because I want people to really wrestle with this biblically, and I've really tried to carefully in written form in several ways to try to make a biblical argument for how we're supposed to steward our vote and how we're supposed to make sense of elections in Canada. And I'm kind of rolling these articles out between now and the election, because I want to offer to people, don't believe the lie, don't believe the narrative, don't believe what you've been told, but maybe, just maybe, the scriptures actually do offer some wisdom, and I would say some stronger directives on how we're supposed to vote and for whom we're supposed to vote. And I think we need to take that seriously. Anyway, so I'll plug my own stuff at the end, because I have no shame. But
no, that's good. Hey, but before we move on, I just wanted to make one point. I think you forgot one thing that this Trump boogeyman approach allows them to do. It allows them to discredit right-wing politics. Right? Because,
that's right. Yep.
Because he's the face of right-wing politics in the world. So, conservatism, if Trump fails, if Trump is the bad guy, the bogeyman, then that automatically allows us to continue the Overton window shifting to the left, us making anybody right of, like Marx as a far way, far right winger. Like that's essentially what's being tried, the play that's being run. And the amazing part, Andrew, is so many Canadians buy it.
Right.
The boomers are like, we've talked about how we hate the okay boomer and how that's used a lot of, but unfortunately when it comes to this election, Canadian boomers sure are, playing their part for that stereotype.
I'm sure people have seen the video clips in Peterborough and in Oshawa of lined up and accosting people filming, or that one guy giving the double middle finger.
Up,
he had to delete his Facebook account. So
well,
just
couldn't happen to a worse guy. So I mean, I don't know the guy, but
while we're
a loser.
No, I do know that guy because I probably encountered that guy about 5,000 times during COVID. He's a part of the Borg. He's the same person that they're all the
NPC.
same. He probably double masked, got 7 boosters, and we're in this together. That's that guy. He probably let his parents die alone and miserable in an old age home after having defecated themselves, and now they're separated from everyone that they love, and he was okay with it because he needed to be kept safe and he has a pension to take care of him. I know that guy. That guy's I encountered thousands of those guys in the last 5 years. But as we move on to the last clip, while we're talking about the economy and economics and finances, it may feel like a long time ago, but only 5 years ago, our country changed forever. Our government showed us that at any time and for any reason, they can lock us down, they can close our churches, they can tell our parents and grandparents that they're going to have to die alone. One of the greatest lessons of 2020 was to make sure, when possible, to work with fellow Christians and those who share your values. That's why we continue to recommend Rocklinc investment partners. Whether you're building your investment portfolio or in retirement, Rocklinc will work with you to ensure that your finances are safeguarded for the future. Call our friends at Rocklinc at 905-631-5462 or email them info@rocklink.com. Everyone knows the NDP is imploding. They might not actually get official party status after the election. Great. No one outside of Quebec takes the Bloc seriously, of course. So the debate was really a face-off between Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney, the Liberal in blue and the Liberal in red, right? The devil in the blue dress, or Mark's Commie, or Mark's Smarmy, or Maximum Carnage, whatever you want to call them.
We should
be collecting some royalties. So here are some examples of the two Liberals, one in blue, one in red, teeing off on one another.
I think the relationship that we've had with the United States, relationship over the course of almost the last 4 decades, which has been one of steady and increasing integration, has fundamentally changed because the president is looking to fundamentally restructure the trading system. So the starting point has to be one of strength. It has to show that we have control of our own economic destiny, has to have a clear plan here at home to build this economy, to diversify our trading partners with like-minded countries, and also has to have a position of strength in terms of our reaction to the U.S. unjustified tariffs. And that's why we have put in place counter tariffs that have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impact here at home.
I think we do need to counter the American tariffs with our own to deter this economic aggression. We must make clear that we will always be sovereign and independent. What would I be doing differently? Well, we need to be in a position of strength. The Liberal government has weakened our economy with anti-energy laws, red tape,
How would I be different?
and high taxes that have driven $500 billion out of our country into the United States and made us incapable of shipping our resources overseas. That weakness threatens our ability to stand up for ourselves. So what I do, I would cut taxes, red tape, and improve our resource projects so that we can get our goods to market.
He wouldn't break up the
bring
dairy
home the
cartel,
jobs. So we
which he's
stand up to
already
President
said he will
Trump
never
from
do.
a position of strength. Mr. Carney,
No, he's too afraid.
claim that you want our country to
lobbyists.
respond with strength, but after the last decade, half of which time you've been Justin Trudeau's economic advisor, our economy is weaker than ever before. It's been the worst growth in the G7. We've lost $500 billion of investment south of the border. You supported blocking pipelines in Canada that gave Donald Trump and the U.S. a near monopoly over our energy. And now you want to keep in place Bill C-69, the liberal no new development law that blocks us from shipping our resources overseas. How could you possibly think it's a good idea to give the Americans a continued monopoly on our energy projects?
Within the first week as Prime Minister, I sat down with all the premiers of the provinces and territories, as well as the leaders of the Indigenous peoples. Got an agreement with all the provinces and territories, doesn't happen very often, got an agreement for them to have one Canadian economy instead of 13. I'm interested in solutions. I'm interested in getting energy infrastructure built. That means pipelines, that means carbon capture storage, that means electricity grids. And here's how you do it. And we've already moved in the first month. Cooperation agreements with the provinces. Guess what? We are a federation. You need to cooperate with Quebec. You need to cooperate with the provinces. You need to get First Nations and Indigenous people buy-in.
By taking a whole bunch of money from Alberta and giving it to other
provinces. The one
provinces
project, one review
and not giving Alberta
window
a fair
that
deal.
we put in
That's how you
place
cooperate.
at that first ministers' meeting, as well as, if necessary, using emergency powers to fulfill the federal responsibility. Mr. Singh is absolutely right about the East-West grid interconnections, which is part of the energy corridor. Huge opportunities for this country. We have to be able to do more than one thing. Third point, fundamental point. We can give ourselves far more than Donald Trump can ever take away. If we have one Canadian economy, not 13, and if we just look at that agreement we got with the provinces, look at what Ontario and Nova Scotia...
Everybody's hair should be standing up at this point, because what is he pushing for? He's pushing for more centralization of the Canadian economy, right? Like, that's what he's pushing for. This guy who praises Karl Marx, who believes in the labor theory of value, who believes in exceedingly massive bureaucracies and centralized government. Like, the guy is a communist. He's a communist who has an air of respectability for some reason unbeknownst to me. And we just have to call it out. Mark's commie is an appropriate name to give to Mark Carney. And this is what's coming out in his, he's boring. He's like an annoying guy that everybody wants to skip his talk at the conference, that he's just perpetually there and nobody really cares what he has to say. But behind that is extremely radical worldview and economic policies. I just wanted to point that out.
Have just announced in terms of their steps towards this. This is within our grasp.
Mark Carney is asking for a fourth Liberal term, repeating the exact same Liberal promises that priced you out of a House. Just a few weeks ago, before the election, the Liberals voted against taking the GST off new homes, and they have continued to build up bureaucracies that block construction. We need a change so that you can afford a home, and our change will be, again, to axe the sales tax on new homes, incentivize municipalities to speed up permits, free up land, and cut development costs. Train up 350,000 young people who can be in the trades to build those homes and sell off the land that is going to be needed in order to build homes. That is a real plan for you to own a home and afford your life for a change.
Mr. Carney, they're coming at you from both sides. What do you say?
Okay. I know it may be difficult, Mr. Poilievre. You spent years running against Justin Trudeau on the carbon tax, and they're both gone. Okay, they're both gone. And we're in a new
impersonation of them with the same policies tonight.
Very different. Look, I'm a very different person from Justin Trudeau.
He doesn't know how he has all the same values. They have the same world and life view, but he's very different, Andrew.
I'm different than Justin Trudeau. He's the mouth. I'm the brain, obviously. And
We're
also,
different.
the carbon tax, I just hid it behind this door. It's it's gone. It's gone. I made it disappear because I just hid it behind this door.
Yeah, through a fake executive order.
But you know what?
That's so crazy. He also, I do, before you make your point, I do want to get this in here. Well, they were talking about energy policy. It wasn't in that montage, but it needs to be pointed out. Mark Carney confused the Keystone Pipeline with the Trans Mountain Pipeline. So he went on this whole 2-minute rant, and he got the entire thing wrong. Everything he said was totally and utterly wrong because he doesn't know Canada. He doesn't live here. He hasn't been here forever. He doesn't actually know about our economy, about the projects, about the problems we're facing. The guy considers himself a globalist par excellence. He has 3 different passports. He's hardly lived in Canada over the last multiple decades at this point. He's a fraud. He's a loser. He's a communist. Deal with him that way, people.
Yeah. So I do want to, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I agree with Mark Smarmy.
Oh no,
that
we have to end the show.
Yes, hold on. no, they're not threatening me
fade
outside. I promise.
Fade the black.
I have to agree. I have to agree with Maximum Carnage that he is not Justin Trudeau. That he is different than Justin Trudeau. He's substantially worse than Justin Trudeau. So I just want to agree with him.
I'll allow that agreement.
And say you're right. They're different people. He's significantly worse. It's also interesting to note that Carney has no answer for any of Poilievre's accusations throughout the debate. Like he has no way to defend himself and say, no, here's an explanation behind it. Like he's got nothing. He's got nothing other than sloganeering and virtue signaling and pretending like everything is okay. And my final comment on this debate is that, like I said earlier, it's fitting that it happened the same weekend that WrestleMania 41 did, because the fact that you could watch this debate and leave with the impression that they're actually opposed to one another, that they're actually trying to work against each other, they ultimately have different goals, that that when the cameras shut down, that they didn't all go celebrate together with an expensive dinner and drinks at your taxpayer expense, and that they're not ultimately actually working to the same goal, which is to drive Canada away from Christ. If you've been fooled by that, then kudos to them, because their WWF scripting and their promos at their best. If you watch that and think that they're actually opposed to one another and that fundamentally there's a disagreement on the ultimate agenda, if you think that, then their writing is fantastic and they did exactly what they were supposed to do, which is convince you that really they're fighting for the good of Canada when all they're doing is fighting to decide who will. The only thing you're arguing over is who will plunge Canada into ruin quicker. That's the only thing they're arguing over, is who applies the gas faster. That's all. That's all they're ultimately disagreeing over, not whether we're going over the cliff, but how quickly we go over the cliff. That's what they're fighting about. And if you don't think that, then their scriptwriters deserve every penny they've got because they've duped you.
I think cynical maximalist aside, the basic point you're putting forward is correct. Is that the Conservatives, if they are to get in, with the policies that they're putting forward right now, it is not the drastic U-turn that needs to take place in order to turn Canadian culture around. And it also apparently isn't followed up with cultural regeneration and reformation and revival in our nation. Now, there's pockets of that I'm happy about, that, you know, both you and I are working diligently towards, and we have many other friends in this nation who are pushing towards that end. And those are the encouraging things. that I see on the horizon. But our safety isn't in chariots. It's not in political leaders. It's not in Pierre Poilievre, certainly. It's not in any of these men on the stage. And, you know, you're right. Like, they share such similarities at the foundational worldview level that it's pretty hard to imagine things drastically changing, especially since, and this has probably been the part of the election that I think has been the most telling and the most frustrating, is the conservatives still live under the liberal gaze. It is completely, totally, and utterly obvious that that is the case. And because that's the case, they're not going to be taking the radical steps that we need to turn back the radicality of these Marxists who have totally destroyed our nation over the last number of decades, largely led up by the insanely progressive liberals who are wolves in centrist, or progressive wolves in centrist clothing. That's essentially what they have been over the last many decades. And that's partly why the NDP is less and less relevant, because it turns out if the liberals are the communists, why do we need the communists anymore? So it'll be interesting to see how everything shakes out. Andrew, we are planning, Lord willing, to do an election live stream special. We've never done a live stream. Well, I guess we did back in the Liberty Coalition Canada days, but with LD, we've never done one. But we're going to venture out. We're going to have some guests. It should be a fun time. We would encourage people to get out and vote, to do so according to conscience, leaving the ends up to the Lord Jesus Christ, who sovereignly reigns as the King of Kings over all of creation, and to continue the hard work of building culture that's glorifying to God, and being in community with other believers, and really doing the hard work of kind of, breaking up the fallow ground of Canadian culture and planting something that's going to be lasting, regardless of who's in office. That's what we're so concentrated on here. That's why, for a political show, not, in a 4-week cycle for the election, which is absurd anyway, but for us not to cover the first 3 weeks, it might seem absurd, but it's because we've been so busy doing that other stuff that's going to be more enduring than this political cycle, that it really is, the reason we haven't got to it sooner. But we hope you appreciated the show. We're hoping you look forward to some of the stuff we're doing. Andrew, I'll let you kind of have the last word, and then we'll close her off.
A few housekeeping things, not too long. First of all, as I said earlier, I'm engaging in a little bit of shameless self-promotion.
Do it.
I've been trying to write specifically about how we approach voting as Christians and what to do. So a couple days ago, and then tomorrow, and then I think on Thursday or Friday, there'll be 3 articles coming out. They're re-releases of older articles I wrote, whatever, year or so old, over at the Maple Theonomist. So the mapletheonomist.substack.com. You can find the 3 articles. The first one is a proposed guide to Christians voting. The second one is Light in the Land of Goshen, which is what happens if we vote on principle and then, Canada becomes quote unquote worse. What does that mean for Christians? What sort of faith do we have? And then the third one I wrote at the very beginning of 2025, which is, the title is My 2025 Resolution is I'll Vote Like a Christian. And so I'm trying to lay down thoroughly biblical principles. I'm looking at narratives. I'm looking at descriptive passages, prescriptive passages, clear commands to try to help us understand how to vote biblically. So head over to the Maple Theonomist.
As always, you're probably going to make people uncomfortable.
That's fine, but I'm going to be totally honest. Up until this point,
I'm here for it.
With the articles I've written, when I engage with people and they push back, even in the comments, no one, and I'm going to say this, no one offers a counter biblical argument. The arguments that I hear opposed to it are always, Here's this pragmatic, here's this strategic, here's this logical. And I've kept saying to people, book, chapter, verse. You're a Protestant. We believe that scripture alone is the only infallible rule for faith, life, practice, and doctrine. So you show me your argument biblically. You make a biblical argument for voting for the Conservative Party, a biblical argument. And don't say love your neighbor. That's garbage. I could make the same argument. Show me really biblically justification for voting for the Conservative Party, and we can have a debate. And no one's been able to present it. So I guess I challenge our audience. If you can bring me a thoroughly biblical counter argument to the ones that I raise in these articles, and show me that why I'm wrong and the scripture support otherwise, I would invite you to do that, but you're not going to be able to because it doesn't exist. So that's the first thing.
Andrew, it's funny that you say that too, because I on one of Cat Canada's posts, I chimed in and I said I'll never be voting Conservative again, given their brazen position on abortion. And it's so funny because I got attacked from all sides because some people thought I was a lib who was trying to bring up the issue of abortion because I was pro-choice or whatever. And then other people were like, oh, like supposed conservatives, well, oh, it's a good thing that they they're for a women's right to choose.
Right.
And just like, man, with conservatives like this, who needs liberals? Who needs commies? Yeah.
So the mapletheonomist.substack.com, read the articles, comment. I really truly want to strengthen the church and help people think biblically about these. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you have to head over to our Substack and subscribe to join our mailing list. Free for sure. Paid is good. Because that's going to be the only way that you get the link, even as a free subscriber, for our 3-part webinar series on Bitcoin starting this Friday, April 25th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. You're going to want to join. It's free, but the only way to get the link is to sign up and subscribe over at our Substack. And I'll close with this. I want to remind people that when it comes to voting, do what pleases the Lord. And I'll tell you what I plan on doing. So people are asking me, what are you going to do, Andrew? What do I do if in my riding there's no believer who's running, right? There's no party or candidate that I can truly support that I think pleases the Lord. My options are, the Uniparty and listen, I'm going to say it. And also the PPC, okay? Which again, I think that at a fundamental level does not support the things that honor the Lord. And I don't think I can in good conscience vote for them. Now, what do you do then? So what do I plan on doing? Unfortunately, federally, we don't have the option to decline our vote like we do provincially. You can fill your ballot out in such a way that your vote is registered as a decline to vote, which is important. You can't do that federally. So this is what I plan on doing federally. When I look at the names and I look at the parties, if it does not fulfill what I believe to be the biblical requirements for how a Christian should vote in elections, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to write what I think are proper adjectives beside the names of every person who's on the ballot. And then I'm going to draw another circle and I'm going to write Matthew Halleck and I'm going to put an X in that circle. That's my plan. So my plan is I'm going to look at the Greens, whoever's running for the Green Party, I'm going to write climate cultist beside their name. And then for the Liberal Party, I'm going to write Marxist, and then for the NDP, I'm going to write full on socialist. And then beside the Conservative Party, I'm going to say compromise liberal in blue. And I'm going to write the adjectives that I think best describe the people running and the parties they represent, which is I'm spoiling my ballot. Okay. Spoiling my ballot, but I will cast a vote that I think will honor the Lord. And so I'm going to write Matt Halleck. Now, some of you might think that's a waste of a vote. What are you doing? Buddy. You're ridiculous. The liberals will win. Blah, 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 blah. Show me in the scriptures. That's the challenge.
Yeah.
Read the articles and tell me what else. If what I've said is true, and if what I've deduced indeed are the biblical principles, how could I justify a vote for someone that's okay with murdering babies just because another baby murderer will win in his place? And I cannot. Indeed, I cannot. And I will not. because it doesn't honor the Lord. Doesn't matter how you slice it. It doesn't matter how bad the liberals are. It doesn't matter how much less money they'll spend. At the end of the day, if they will not do everything in their power to protect and secure the health and well-being of every single Canadian, from the very small ones to the very old ones, you should not vote for them. They are anti-Christ. You should not support them. And I don't think it will please the Lord if you do. So with that in mind, if I haven't upset enough people, go read the articles, get the full breadth version of my position and what I think you should do to honor the Lord. Now, if you happen to be in a riding like in Peterborough and you go to the election and you see Matthew Grove running with the CHP, who agrees that we need to abolish the murder of preborn babies in our country and establish it upon the rule of God's law, you vote for him.
Yeah.
Don't vote for the conservative, vote for him, right? You vote for the person who loves the Lord and honors the Lord, and you're blessed to be able to actually vote for someone like that in your riding. So there are those options.
Windsor does it. I mean, you guys are big.
So there are four ridings, and there's one that is running a candidate who, when she did her elevator speech, on the CTV News basically said, yeah, I believe that all life is valuable and sacred from conception to natural death, and we will defend all life and every human being. And I'm like, I'd vote for you if I was in your riding. You're the next riding over. I'll support you, but I can't vote for you. So
yeah, no worries. Well, I'm thankful in some of the research that I did that there are some options. Although the options that you put forward sounds pretty good. I'm not going to vote for myself. I'll vote for you. So we'll each have one vote. So there you go. Mom, I made it. One person voted for me for Prime Minister of Canada.
Technically, it won't count because it's a spoiled ballot. But I'll put your name down anyways.
It's the spirit and the heart that matters. I've been told that. Yeah, thought that counts. Yeah.
And you might be saying, and again, you might be hearing that, thinking, Andrew, why on earth would you do that? You are helping the Liberals win. And my answer to you is, if you go read what I wrote, and you will see why, that if I truly believe, if the convictions I have indeed are accurately represented in the scriptures, you will see that for me, there is no other option. There is no, because it's not a matter between what's pragmatic or what's not. It's ultimately what pleases the Lord and what doesn't. What does he require of me and what does he not? And that's what drives me. And so if I believe that what pleases the Lord is not voting for someone who will support any injustice and who will not protect all Canadians, which is their fundamental role as a civil servant, then I cannot vote for them. I cannot support them because I do not think it will please the Lord to do so. And I don't think there's any way to justify it otherwise. And read the articles. You'll understand why more fully. I think that is the position. And I'm okay to be wrong. If Andrew, listen, actually you're missing the point. Okay. But as it stands right now, this is what I think the scriptures communicate on this matter.
Yeah. And as far as like my writing here, it's like the conservatives win by Saddam Hussein numbers. So they win by like 60%. So one vote isn't going to do anything different in my area, even if the pragmatists are worried about that. But I do think you're right, Andrew. We are responsible for casting our vote in a God-glorifying way. We are not responsible for the outcomes of the election. That is a thing that I think Christians need to understand. What is actually in your jurisdiction? What are you actually responsible that you will give an account to the Lord for? He's sovereign over the outcomes. Mm-hmm. When we parse things like that, when we keep things clear like that, it's really like a really like distilled example of sphere sovereignty. I think it helps us get clarity, the clarity that we need. And the fact of the matter is, I hope it creates an urgency in Canadians that, well, if I can't vote for compromise conservative candidates. Maybe we have to do something different.
Right.
Right.
Go
Maybe
run.
Go
run for office. Like
Exactly.
get engaged, get involved. Like stop whining. And you know what? And you might say, "Oh, Andrew, why don't you?" No, while I'm not running myself, we are actively working at establishing an EDA, supporting a kid. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is. Where I'm saying, you're right, I can't vote for any of these people. So what are we doing? We're actually working to help someone to run because we think that that's the right play. So more of that and less of hand wringing and complaining and full on pragmatism. I'll share this quick story. I know we've gone over, but something you said, Matt, that I think it's helpful. There's a story in the Old Testament where God commands King Saul, once you defeat this nation, everything's got to go. The animals, like it's just got to be complete and
put them
utter
towards the ban.
destruction, all of them. Okay, and so, and then Saul says, "Well, you know, these animals, why would I kill them when I can offer them as a sacrifice to the Lord in worship?" And so Saul says, "Well, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these animals that the Lord said to slaughter, and then I'm going to save them." And so, God, why would I waste these animals? I know you told me to kill all the animals, but why would I waste these animals when I can offer them all? And the people can offer them to you as a sweet smelling aroma and an offering that's pleasing in your sight. Why wouldn't we do that instead? And then when Samuel shows up in the text, it says, "What is this bleating of sheep that I hear?" And Samuel confronts King Saul and says, "What are you doing?" And Saul says, "Well, I know that God told me that this is what he wanted me to do, but I thought, here's something that's a better idea. I have a better idea than obedience to the law of God." Yeah. And Samuel said, "Because you have done what is wicked," right? Saul thought he was worshiping God by offering the animals that God said destroy. And Samuel says, "Because you have done this wicked thing, the throne will be ripped from your hands and will be given to another." And then God took his spirit from Saul and gave him an unsettling spirit. Why? Because Saul thought that what would be more pleasing to the Lord would be his idea of what's good and practical and right. And what he forgot was God requires obedience. Why do you call me master and you don't do what I command, Jesus says? If you love me, you'll do what I command you to do, Jesus says. And this is what the Lord requires of us, is to obey him, is to do what he says. He is God. We are not. He is creator. We are creature. It's his universe. It's his rules. It's his standards. And when the Lord commands us to do this and not do this, and when he lays out for us, this is what I require of you, O man, it is foolish for us to say, "Yeah, but I have an idea that I think would work better." Abandon that idea. Do what the Lord requires. Do what pleases him, and the outcomes are his.
Yeah, absolutely.
You obey. You obey. He takes care of the rest.
Yeah, no. And a succinct Bible verse that encapsulates everything that you're talking about. Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 29. "The secret things belong to Yahweh our God, but the things that are revealed belong to us and to our children forever, that we may do all the words of this law. If you love me, keep my commandments," is what Jesus, the Lord and risen Savior, said. So that is how we ought to behave. That's how we ought to respond. And those are the things that we should be thinking about as we're entering the ballot box for this 2025 election. May you cast your vote wisely, dear Christian brothers and sisters. May we see you during our live stream coming up in a week or so. And may God be glorified always. As always, Galatians 5:1. God bless you all.
Liberty Dispatch has been brought to you by SDG Media. If you want to stay in touch with us and all things Liberty Dispatch, join our email list, or support the show, head over to ldcanada.substack.com.